Okay, today's project is we're going to replace this 20-plus-year-old sink and faucet. A couple things we want to consider is the size that you're going to replace it with. And what we've decided to do is go with a stainless steel single basin. As you can see here, there's two basins, which in our experience, it really divides the sink in two halves and makes it actually smaller. We prefer the larger opening. So the first thing we did is we measured it. So this is 22 by 33 opening, and also looking at how many holes there are for the sink, and in this case this is the dishwasher vent we have to consider as well. So we're going to clean out our workspace. I'm going to point down here. We're going to also clean out this lower space, and then we're going to get started. Okay, one of the things I want to do is show you the tools I'm going to use today for this project. Most plumbing does not require a lot of advanced tools or sophistication. I'm just an amateur, but I've done enough plumbing to know what we typically use. So I have a screwdriver. In this case, I've got some multiple tips, a wrench. Sometimes a vice grip is necessary. I've got a larger wrench here. I like these box end type of wrenches because they're specific sizes. A tape measure, a level, so some basic things that we're going to use today. Okay, the first thing I want to do is point out a few of the things that we're going to have to disconnect and remove. So under your sink, you should have a couple of supply lines. This is for your hot water and your cold water. You'll notice the valves right here. So we're going to turn these off. Left is off, usually, or I'm sorry, right is going to be off. Oh, this is hard. And then up here is another one. So we'll turn those off. We'll check the water supply when we turn the faucet on. The other thing is your garbage disposal right here. You can see there's power that runs to an outlet here. We're just going to disconnect that, and that will remove the power from the disposal. A couple of other things. As you notice that this has a drain on the one side of the sink for the disposal. We have another one here, and with our new sink we're going to have just a single drain, so we won't need a second outlet here, which means we're going to have to reconfigure this piping a little bit. We'll remove the disposal. Here you'll see this is a weight for the faucet. This will come off with the faucet. And I think that's it. Okay, one of the things I mentioned is once you turn the valve off, you want to drain the line a little bit. And by doing that, you just turn the valve or the faucet on just to make sure you don't have any water coming out. This looks good, so I know there's no water coming out here. You notice I've added a bucket. Sometimes there will be some residual water in the lines. I always like to have a paper towel or a cloth to wipe things up if there is a little bit of moisture. Okay, I've got a wrench to disconnect the supply lines, also a screwdriver here with a straight tip, and I'm going to use that to remove the clamps on the dishwasher vent line. Also, there's screws right here for the disposal. Okay, so you can see I've disconnected the supply line from the faucet for both the hot and the cold. I've also disconnected the garbage disposal vent line here, and I've drained them into this bowl. The next thing I want to do now is I'm going to start loosening the drain pipe here, the black, so I can disconnect the disposal. Okay, so you can see the black drain pipe here has some of these large nuts. The nice thing about this is that it makes it fairly easy for amateur plumbers like myself to get this right. I'm going to remove this. It's been here for a little while, so I may have to replace it, but if I can reuse it, I'll reuse it. Okay, so I'm just going to loosen these nuts. They may be a little tight. Okay, that one came off pretty good. Just going to hand loosen them. Okay, these look like they're all, you see they slide up fairly easily. You can also see that here there's This elbow will start to get loose. Now there's probably some water in this trap, so I want to be aware of that. I'll put the bucket under there. Remove this one. Yeah, you can see some water coming out. And I'll just pour that in there. Okay, now that we've disconnected the black pipe, the drain pipe, you'll notice that there's a long extension coming out of the disposal. I'm going to leave that in place because all I want to do is reuse this. The disposal's still good. I may have to cut this depending on the position of the disposal with the new sink. One thing I do need to do is disconnect the vent line here. So I'll use my screwdriver and retain that clamp. And then we'll talk about removing the disposal from this sink. Okay, now that I've loosened this clamp, in some cases, because this disposal has been in place for a while, the connection between the vent hose and this outlet can be a little tight. So sometimes you just need to wiggle it to break it free, and then you can walk it off of that. Now there may be some water in here. We're good. Okay, garbage disposal removal is kind of a unique aspect of any kitchen sink. Some sinks don't have it, this one does. We want to retain this disposal, and I want to just kind of highlight how a garbage disposal is added to a sink or removed from a sink, so for future, if you decide to install one, you'll have some video to go back to. This has a retaining ring, and you can see how this is mounted to the underside of the sink. What's interesting about disposals is they have kind of a lock ring. You need to just kind of walk it off, and that will release the disposal. This lock ring, actually when we put it back, will be resecured to this retainer ring. Okay, we were able to break free the old sink from the counter, and you'll see there's seal here and there's some edge cleanup that we'll have to do. I'm using some wood wedges to hold it in place. This is an old cast iron sink, so it's kind of heavy, and so we want to keep our fingers from getting pinched. Okay, we were able to remove the old cast iron sink. You can see the hole here. We wanted to protect the edge of the granite so we didn't damage it. We do have some cleanup before we put the new one in. You can see on the underside, we've retained the faucet and the drain lines. We just pulled this all out at one time. I'm going to disconnect all this now. It's easier than when it's in place. Okay, now that we've got the sink out, I've removed some of the hardware. We're just going to dispose of this sink. But before we do that, if you remember this flange, which is the ring for retaining the garbage disposal, we want to reuse that. The way you disconnect that is secured with these screws. So we're just going to loosen these up just enough to separate those two. And then once we do that, we'll be able to remove this ring from the sink. We'll get a new seal, and then we'll install it in the new one. Okay, one of the things about the flange for the disposal is the way it's retained is this retainer ring goes on there. So you want to make sure that you free this off like this and work your way around. And now that bottom flange can be removed. This one can be removed, and then the ring on the side will come out. Okay, now that we've removed the other original sink, spent some time cleaning up the granite here where the caulking was and the accumulation of years of gunk, really. So now we feel confident that this edge is nice and clean. We've got our new sink. What I want to do is fit check it before we go much further. Some sinks are a little different than others. The granite opening, just want to make sure we're good. Okay, so that's going to fit nicely into this space. What we're going to do next then is we're going to reattach the garbage disposal flange before we mount the sink. Okay, now that we've got our sink, if you remember, we had these individual pieces from the garbage disposal, and this shroud will go in easier before the sink gets installed. Otherwise, you have to install them after and climb up from underneath. So the top piece, you want to put plumber's putty on there. We're just going to insert that in here. Okay, it's not going to sit snugly yet. And then we're going to turn that over. And while we hold that in place, we're going to take this piece with the washers. Okay, we're going to put those over there. We're going to come back with this piece. And then this piece is the piece that will attach the disposal. We're going to realign that here. And then if you remember our ring, the retainer ring is what actually holds the piece that the drain and the flange. So that'll go on here. Okay, we have our new sink. We've installed the garbage disposal retaining ring and drain. We also installed the faucet that we purchased, again, because it's easier to do before you install the sink. We followed the manufacturer's instructions. We've secured it on the back side here. We're now ready to put caulking around the base of the sink and install the sink. Okay, we've repositioned the sink in the hole. We've marked the outer edge with the blue tape, and we'll leave that there. We'll pull the sink out, and now we know where to reposition it after we place the caulking. Okay, we've repositioned the sink. We've put some tape on here along the edge just to hold it in place. We know that things can still move a little bit. The faucet's in place, the drain's in place. Now we're going to focus on underneath. We're going to reinstall the disposal and the plumbing, and then finally we'll reattach the supply lines. Okay, we finished reinstalling the garbage disposal, and you can see that with the new location, based on the new sink, we had to reconfigure the outlet drain. We added an elbow here, an extension, and we're in good shape. The last step will be to reconnect the dishwasher, the garbage disposal vent, and finally the hot water, cold water supply lines. Okay, we've reconnected the supply lines, we've re-plugged in the disposal, and now the next thing to do is turn the water supply on. One thing I want to share with you that I do is I always put down a couple pieces of paper towel as a way of picking up and identifying any leaks, even the smallest drip. So I'll put paper towel down before I turn things on, and then I'll watch it for a little while. And that way, if a leak does appear, then I'll know where it's from. So let's turn the supply line on. Okay, well, it's been quite a project. Every home project's going to have a few hiccups along the way, but we hope you learn something from our experience and our sharing. And you can see there's water in the sink here, the faucet's running, so we're excited about that. So far, there's no leaks showing up on the paper towels, so we'll keep an eye on that, but keep trying. And if you have any questions about installing a sink or a disposal, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But thanks for watching.